Hi everyone, welcome back to Nightlight Astrology. It's me, Dana, and I'm here with Alex and Whitney today to talk all about astrological self-reflection, particularly through the lens of shadow work. Before we get into it, we have a couple of announcements for the channel. The first is that Nightlight's first year astrology certification course is getting ready to begin. The next cohort begins on November 8th, very, very soon. Early bird payment is only available until October 24th, so be sure to get on that if you haven't already. Be sure to sign up. And tuition assistance is available, so don't hesitate to reach out if that's something you would like to ask for. Nightlightastrology.com, and there you can also find information about the upcoming immersive retreat called the Oracle Within. It is June 6th through 13th, 2026. It's in Mexico. It's going to be fantastic. So find out all those details on nightlightastrology.com. Whitney and Alex, what's up?
So excited to be here.
Happy to see you. We're happy to see you. It's been so long.
I'm happy to see you guys too. The fall is busy. It's a busy time of year, I know, for all of us, but yeah, I'm grateful to have some time to talk astrology with you guys. And especially this topic. This is like one of my favorite things to talk about with astrology is self-reflection, self-inquiry, and then adding on the layer of shadow work is really interesting too. I'm kind of curious before we get started, is this something that you two have done before? Like whether consciously or just sort of by accident?
This is my literal favorite thing to do and talk about. This is what I do in energy work all the time, is helping people access the subconscious and clearing out shadows, things that are causing shadows. And it's been probably the most healing type of work I've done for myself, and a very long journey of engaging in it, but I am so excited to talk about this. I think it's going to be a really empowering and fun conversation.
I agree. You know, I feel like one of the biggest strengths of astrology and astrologers is the way that we can sort of shine lights equally on all of these various parts of the chart. And it's so interesting because as a trained astrologer, when you look at a chart, you don't yet really know which placements, qualities, etc. are the shadowed are the shadow work, right? Are the things that are in the shadows. And so it becomes just that much more important, right? When engaging in client work, to really be able to sort of ask the right questions and approach the entire chart with sensitivity, right? And I know I have, in learning astrology, I have also been able to recognize my own shadows as well, which is just such a gift.
Yeah, when I was thinking about this topic, my initial thought was I want to make this clear for someone who's not an astrologer, how they could do this with their own chart, because that was sort of how I got started in astrology in the first place. And I didn't even have the language to know that that was what I was looking for, but I needed some guidance to look at my chart on my own. But certainly there's plenty of astrologers listening right now, and I think the point about how do we take this with client work is really, really important too. So I think something for everyone today, hopefully. So let's start with just birth chart self-inquiry. This is a phrase that I've used, and I'm sure other people have used as well, but I think this is like the essence of what we're talking about here. Reflecting on the archetypal symbolism of your placements through the lens of your lived experience, in order to gain a deeper understanding of yourself, your patterns, your path, the deeper truths of who you are. And I feel like this kind of reflection is really, really useful because it gives you a spiritual perspective on your life. Because so often we're looking at our life through the lens of the ego, which is good. Like there's nothing wrong with that. We need that to navigate the material world. But the birth chart can give you a different point of view, a different angle, a spiritual angle, and it helps you make sense of your life in a way that can bring about a lot of healing and clarity.
Absolutely. And you know, one of the things that this kind of reflection has done for me is it's really helped me take away a lot of shame, like I'm wrong. there's something wrong with me. And I remember when I was getting my first couple of readings, when I was still kind of skeptical about astrology and not sure about it, and because I knew astrology as like horoscopes in newspapers, right? That are general and you can kind of make mean anything. But when I was getting these readings, I was realizing, wow, even the stuff about myself that I have not liked or has not served me in a healthy way is perfect. It's there. It's represented, and that's one of the reasons that I do like the system of like saying, Saturn's in fall or Saturn's at exaltation, because it gives you this reflection of yourself that's not to shame you, it's to say all of you is right. And that the shadows, the things that are difficult, what I love about astrology is it gives you another prism through which to look at those. So it's like you may have been experiencing one kind of manifestation of those patterns of energy in your chart as indicated by the planets. But if you look at them from another perspective, that same constellation of planets, those aspects, the stellium, whatever it is, can mean something totally different, and often something very much in line with your soul's desire for this lifetime, in a very fulfilling way. So I think it's very empowering, and it just lets you know you're as perfect as the night sky. You don't go outside at night and look up at the moon and say like, hey, could you move over a little bit? Like, could you be a little smaller? Could you be a little bigger? Say it's beautiful. It's the moon. There's the same reflection of that.
Oh, that was beautiful. That was so well put, Alex. And I love that you bring up the idea of the birth chart as a prism. It almost reminds me of what Adam always says about turning the jewel, right? And I think there's something really key to that concept here, because the birth chart in essence is a reflection of our karma in life, right? It is the promise of our life as it unfolds. And what that means when we look at that, I think one of the key pieces that we have to remember when we look at our own birth charts, when we look at other people's birth charts, is that we must suspend that moral judgment, right? It's the concept of there are no good charts, there are no bad charts, right? Because the symbols speak in so many multivalent ways that it's all about expression, right? And those things light up at different points in your life due to transits, etc. And so that's why I think this work is so important, because it helps us really see both sides of the coin, right? Take the good with the bad, etc.
Yeah. And to both of your points, it helps us see that it's not good or bad. Like, that's what the spiritual perspective is. It's the point of view that does not judge. It just can accept what is, for what it is. So let's talk a little bit more about shadow work. There's this term called concept creep. This is going to sound kind of random, but I promise it's not. Concept creep is this idea that words start to kind of lose their meaning over time when they're used out of context. And I feel like shadow work is one of those phrases where it's like, we use it all the time. What does it even mean? And I am not going to pretend to be an expert on Jung. I'm not. I've read some of his stuff. I've studied psychology. Like, I have an MA in school counseling. I know about psychology. I know about Jung, but I'm not like a Jungian, right? However, I did find a quote that I feel like is a good encapsulation of what we're talking about. And it goes like this: one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The latter procedure, however, is disagreeable and therefore not popular. I think that kind of captures what we think of when we think of shadow work. We're trying to make the subconscious or the unconscious conscious so that we can feel more whole and complete, but it's in the dark for a reason, meaning there's something about it that the ego self is like, ew, don't like that, don't want to acknowledge that, don't want to look at it. But the shadow is not a villain. It's just the energy that's been warped by fear. So really, for me, what we're doing with shadow work is we're alchemizing fear. We're disarming and neutralizing fear so that we don't have to be afraid of the dark anymore, so to speak.
I love that. And I think also it's important to recognize that the shadow is an effect, not a cause. And this is where I think we get tripped up with shadow work a lot of times, because we think we're looking in to find something dark and bad. We're getting towards Scorpio season. So it's like we're all, we're getting towards Halloween. We get into that sort of like, I'm looking into the shadows. And there can be subjectively uncomfortable things to find in the shadow. There can be things that we haven't wanted to look at or couldn't look at for a variety of reasons. But the shadow is cast by something interrupting the light. And what we can see often in doing shadow work is the shadow, the effect, the pattern. I know in our practices we probably talk about patterns all the time. What's the pattern showing up in relationships? What's the pattern showing up with money? You can see that. That's tangible. But it's not that's not the cause. The cause is something that you can't see, that's literally casting a shadow out. And that's the real work, is to go in and be like, what is that belief or that idea or that whatever happened that was interrupting the natural flow of light towards where I wanted to go with it?
Yes, I love, Dana, that you bring the father of archetypal thinking into this conversation, right? I mean, Jungian philosophy certainly provides a foundation for, I know, a lot of the work that I do as an astrologer, right? And the way we think about things symbolically. And so I think that quote was so perfect and really resonates, because when we're talking about the growth we're meant for here in our lifetime, right? Like, self-awareness is the key to that growth. And that's all that shadow work is, right? Unveiling the shadows helps us become more self-aware as people. I mean, that's as simple as that.
Yeah, completely agree. And that's why I think astrology is so well suited as a tool for shadow work. So if I could bridge the two real quick for us, how astrology and shadow work can join hands and work together for a similar purpose, I see it as your birth chart is a cosmic mirror. It is totally a prism too, but I like to think of it as, like, especially when we're talking about self-inquiry work, it's reflecting something back to you. And that something is your spiritual essence. So the act of seeing yourself from that spiritual view, which birth chart self-inquiry will facilitate, it gives you the space to be objective about your experience and really alchemize that shame, like you were talking about, Alex. And I want to come back to that in a little while. That space allows you to forgive yourself, to release the shame, to be proud of yourself in moments where you actually never felt that way before, and just really free you up internally. So if shadow work is about making the unconscious conscious, I think it's also about transmuting fear into love and compassion. And it's easier to see compassion for yourself when you can see the spiritual workings at play. And you can just accept, like, I had lessons to learn. Maybe I would have done things different, but I didn't. And I got something out of it. And I can let that go and move on with my life.
And that you could see it, riffing off that point, Dana, too, that the chart lets you see it. You can't change what you don't see or you can't acknowledge, And I think that so often we're very aware of the results we're getting or the patterns we're getting, especially as we get older, right? You start to see, oh, wow, that came up again, or that type of person came out, or, a different face, different place, but it's the same person I've been dating or being, whatever. And when you can see it through the constructs of the energetic interactions of the chart, or the archetypes, right? How they're interacting, it gives you a wonderful language and lens through which to see it and be like, oh, okay, I was making a decision from this expression of those energies, or I was being, unconsciously going there. And you might not be able to stop just from seeing it, but it gives you a point, like you said, to step back and say, I can look at this more objectively and say, since this is the result I'm getting, here's the shadow that I'm seeing. What is the object that is in place that is causing that shadow to be cast the same way all the time? And then that begins a whole journey of bringing the darkness into light. You're muted, Whit.
Oh, darn it. Again, you guys, I had to close my window and all the drama over here. But back to shadow work. No, I just think this is such a juicy conversation, and I love the description of the birth chart as this cosmic mirror, right? And you're talking as well, Alex, about the reflection, right? It helps us reflect, and it just reminds me that there's a way that we can look at life. We can look at our own birth chart and see that there is like a larger there's a larger work at play here, right? There's a larger scheme in which we're working in, and in that way it makes me think of I've been, as we look forward into this sort of time in the current astrology we are in, with Venus having just entered Libra and whatnot, I'm thinking so much about the concept of amor fati, or to love one's fate, right? And when you're able to sort of shine the light in these dark parts, when we can reflect the whole chart as a mirror, we can see that not only can we choose to love our own fate, but that we can impact it, right? By shining a light in those dark places, we have a say in how we move forward and how life unfolds for us.
Louder for the people in the back, Whitney. Louder for the people in the back. Yes. Yes.
Completely. Yeah, I think that's the whole goal in a phrase. Definitely.
Yeah.
So I would love to share just a path for this, like an approach. And certainly this is not the only approach, but I want to kind of tell you how I stumbled upon a way to do this when I was first getting started with astrology. So before I was ever, taking classes from Adam, when it was just me and my birth chart and Google, because it was before ChatGPT too. And I probably would have used it as a brand new person to astrology, but now I know better, right? Anyway, so
that was a good plug.
Yeah.
Don't do it, guys. Just say no. So, I came to astrology, and probably people listening, maybe you know, maybe you don't. Like, I came to astrology after I quit drinking. I was trying to get to know myself again, because I realized after I stopped that I was numbing, I was running away, and I was in therapy, but I still did not feel connected to myself, and I needed a way to reconnect. And that's how I came back to astrology, because like Alex, I was familiar with it. I was intrigued by it, but I was not looking at my chart. So that was kind of the catalyst for me and why I was paying attention to astrology in the first place. And what I did was I just thought back to moments in my life that were pretty pivotal and pretty loud. And I was just curious about what was going on astrologically. I was not trying to do quote unquote shadow work. I just was curious. And I'll give you an example. In my 20s, I moved to San Diego. I was engaged to somebody who was in law school, and that was why we moved. I moved with him. And about 2 months after we moved, I started feeling like I need to be single. And I was very conflicted about it because we were engaged and I had just left my full-time job that I had got right out of college to move across the country with this guy. So I spent, I'm going to say, at least 6 months really just struggling with the weight of this decision and what to do about it. And we did end up breaking up not once, but twice. So it was like a full year of turmoil, right? Now, when I go to look at this moment, Uranus is on my descendant the whole time. So when I realized that, even as a brand new person to astrology, you know what Uranus is, you know the descendant is like the point of your relationships. It's opposite your ascendant. You can be pretty new in terms of like astrology knowledge to start to see, oh, that's what was going on, right?
Yeah.
And I can't, even now talking about it, like it's been 5 or 6 years since this revelation, but the opening I felt and the relief that I felt, because I knew when I looked at my chart, this was just what time it was, right? It was time for me to be on my own. And if I would have known that then, I could have made that decision a little more confidently, but I could at least say, like, today I can forgive myself. And I don't feel as, like, I still felt in that moment really bad about, like, how it all unfolded for the other person involved in the relationship, right? But I just found so much forgiveness and healing in that moment. So that's my approach, is I like to start with the story of my life. Like, let's start with a moment in time and let's look and see how that moment in time was affecting the chart. And just see what we find. And usually it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear what was going on.
I call this forensic astrology. It's one of my favorite
Yeah.
things to do in a reading when someone comes in and says, 2008, there's a lot of 2008 stuff when Pluto was moving into Capricorn, or 2012, the Uranus-Pluto square. And they'll say, there was something going on. I'm like, okay, well, this big thing happened. We'll go back and look. And I'll be like, oh. And that actually same thing happened to me, Deanna. In 2011, 2012, I ended, or two relationships of mine ended within the course of a year, both kind of nuclear style. And I, hadn't gotten into astrology for another 5 or 6 years, and I brought it to an astrologer, a local astrologer here in Massachusetts. And she looked at my chart and she goes, oh. And I was like, what do you say? She goes, well, your moon was sitting right in the middle of the Pluto-Uranus square. And I remember at that time thinking, like, the universe was like, no, you are going to be on your own now. You can try this again, but we're just going to have to blow it up because you need to be on your own and figure yourself out as an adult, because Saturn had also just conjunct my moon. It was a really interesting time. But this is all to say, it gave me a context, right? It gave me a way of looking at this that was like, okay, so this was something that I was feeling. I knew nothing about astrology at this point, but I was living the archetypes. When I look back at it, I'm like, oh, there was the Pluto existential fear, the dread. There was the Uranus desire for liberation. There was the Pluto, like, we're going to clean it all out and start again. Clean out all the stuff that's not working and start again. We're going to have the Uranus liberation and independence. And it was all there. And I think that it does help you look back with a certain amount of forgiveness and understanding for what was going on. For me, I know in the context of that there was a lot of hurt that was passed around, a lot of forgiveness that needed to happen, and that's the human level that needed to happen around it. But at the same time, it was like, you're going to have to go on this new path, but we can't take that all with you. That old stuff has to go. And I think that there's a very compassionate way sometimes that the universe does, if uncomfortable, and sometimes not always visible in the moment, God knows, that says, in order to keep going, we can't take this. And that was represented. But I think looking at those representations is so important in offering yourself some self-compassion. I think, you can always make amends or have conversations or do whatever you need to do. Like, there's a human component to it too, but it gives you such a beautiful context for all of it.
Yes, and what you both are reminding me of is the fact that for those out there who really only understand the basic keywords, right? Uranus as rebellion or liberation, right? The descendant as the point in the chart most, prominent to our relationships, marriages, one-on-one relationships, right? That just in understanding the basics, you can start to see and understand the symbolism. But what I love about this work is that, yes, in your example, Dana, in that moment, you were experiencing the need for liberation from a relationship that you weren't meant to carry forward, right, in your own development. But then how cool is it that when you start doing this shadow work, you bring that lesson forward, right? You learned it in that initial time and place, and now it's like Alexandra Blair always says, the spiral path of astrology, right? It's like you just keep winding around that staircase. And now in this moment of uncovering shadow work, you've shed light on the importance of that lesson once again. And that's why I think this work is so cool when you can, because it really helps you sort of internalize it and continue to move forward. It'd be interesting to know too, like, where was Uranus when you started doing this shadow work too, right? Was was it in aspect? Was it sextiling? I mean, Uranus moves so slowly, probably not. But you can often see those symbols repeating in the same way.
Absolutely. And I would add to, you can do this just with your birth chart alone as well. Because I think what we're talking about now, the forensic, which I love that phrase, the forensic astrology can be used for this kind of shadow work, for making the unseen seen. And it can also just be like strictly healing and strictly for awareness. If you wanted to start with just your birth chart, let's say, I would just start with any placement that is speaking to you, that you want to know more about, and try to name the full range of expression that that placement could carry for you. I like to start by thinking about the planet. Then I think about how the sign, the energy of the zodiac sign, would influence the planet, and then how that shows up in the house topics. And once you start to just sort of riff, you will start to naturally connect the dots between the archetype and your life. And you'll start to see how both the shadow and the light can show up there. I'm thinking about, I have Jupiter and Mars conjunct in Gemini. And I love that placement mostly. There's a lot that I like about it, but I have realized in myself over the past couple of years that I can be a little bit of a know-it-all. I can be a little just assertive when it comes to my ideas. We'll say it like that. And it's been interesting to reflect on Jupiter and Mars. I'm like, okay, there it is. And there's other things we could say about that, but if you don't have a point in your life that you want to look back on and you want to start with your birth chart, it's pretty simple. You just pick a placement and think about the range of manifestations that placement might have and connect it back to your life.
I have Jupiter and Mars conjunct exactly in Virgo, so I know that feeling really well. Not only am I right, it's correct and precise and the best. So I know this. I really get that, sister. I get it. I think that's really true. It's take one of the things that I think is really important for all of this, and I have done Vipassana meditation now for almost 30 years. Vipassana meditation, this Buddhist style of meditation, is when you step back and watch what is going on in your own mind. You just kind of watch the currents of your thoughts and your feelings. You're aware of it. You try not, when you get involved in it, you kind of let it go and pass through you. And it can be very powerful either as a practice or for doing this kind of work, because it gives you that ability to step back that we keep talking about here. That's what I keep hearing as a common theme, right? To step back, because it can be very, very easy to take it personally, to be mad at yourself, and maybe there are feelings that need to come up around it. It's human too, it's human too. But also be able to look at it and be like, yeah, I do have that tendency. That is a blind spot of mine. Or I'm curious about why this particular, just picking something maybe that isn't even super emotionally charged at first to start with, something that just keeps coming up, like a little splinter in the mind, as they say in the Matrix. And just look at your chart. What sort of symbolism is coming up around that? And just going, approaching it very scientifically, like you're gathering data. Okay, that's really interesting data, because then it allows you to say, like you said, Dana, I love this. What's the other expression of that? So let's say Saturn's in a tough aspect to something major in your chart. It's that can be tough. That can feel like living life with the brake on. That can feel like feeling like you're never quite good enough, or that you're an imposter, or whatever. But you could also look at it as, but I also have a lot of commitment and discipline, maturity, probably beyond my years in a lot of ways. There's another way to see that, and that expression is also available. That's what's really important about this. And I think, Whitney, this speaks to what you were saying about loving your fate. It's fate isn't something, I don't believe, that's locked in and made to be for the rest of your life. We're interacting with the patterns that we came in with all the time. And so when you see what's going on, it's oh, that other expression is available to me too. I can also look at this other expression, and I know now where I've been coming from before and how to move towards it.
Yes. Okay. Now, I will just say at this point that I understand, because I've been there myself, that sometimes you can't see the good in that, right? And in that case, that's where we say, seek help, seek another viewpoint, right? And that is the great work that we do as astrologers, as healers, as you are, Alex, right? Obviously, therapy is always a great choice. Probably first, folks, let me say. But you know, there is sometimes the shadows are so heavy that it can be really hard to see the light reflection of that. And that's when working with a professional is absolutely the best idea, right? Mm-hmm. But like, you guys have spoken through these great methods of sort of uncovering that, but I think I can provide even one more little step, like even for the folks who are practicing astrology in the room. Like, guys, where do we find the shadows in your chart? Like, the 12th house, possibly, right? 12th house sign, 12th house planets, the placement of the ruler of the 12th house is a great place. Like, if we're reverse engineering this process, right? You know, the 12th house is a great place to start. I know I have witnessed in my practice that natal moon placement, especially for day charts as well, can sometimes reflect as a shadow placement, right? Think about the moon as the great reflector of light. Like, sometimes your perception can be distorted. You know, you're both talking about Mars, right? Malefics are another great place to start. I could definitely share a story of my little malefic stellium happening, right? And the shadows associated with that. So there are often places where we can see shadows represented, and sort of like going back to that point that I was iterating at the beginning, where sometimes as a practicing astrologer you might not know, is this a shadow placement? Are they fully aware and self-aware of these, you know? And this can help us in our approach as astrologers to sort of tread lightly and maybe just ask more questions around those particular placements, right? Because there are places you can see that you may more often find the shadows in the chart, right?
Beautiful points. I think if I had to like recap some of the most important things moving forward, if you like, after listening to this, want to go try this right now: curiosity, asking questions, being open, and I would say even doing something prior to, like, it wouldn't be a bad idea to do the Vipassana meditation, to do some breath work, to do something that's going to regulate your physical body so that you are feeling really grounded and safe. You know, especially if you know you're going to go into something that is charged, take care of yourself as you're doing this. And I would also add to document. One of my favorite things lately, because I'm a big journaler, I know not everybody is, and sometimes I can't write fast enough, you know? So 2 things I like. One is I love Notion. I love using Notion for this because it's easy to go back. You can make one page that's all about Jupiter-Mars conjunction, and you can date your entries and see them all in one place. But really what I was going to bring up is the Voice Notes app. Oh my God, game changing. Anytime you have an insight, you just click that little side button and start yapping, and it's there, and you can get a transcript. I think that being able to like talk it out, there's something, maybe it's because I'm a Gemini moon and I just need to vocalize, but there's something very powerful about speaking. And if you don't feel like you have anyone else you can speak to about it, that can be a good tool to use.
Yeah, I love that. Anything you can do, like words I love thinking about when I'm doing this work is how interesting, or really cool, or wow, that makes sense now. It's because, again, and maybe this is just for the fire and water signs because we're all emotional. It's hard to do for all the emotional, watery, fiery people. Is this very easy to be and natural to become invested emotionally and saying, oh, God, if I only didn't have, like, how many times have you thought, like, well, if I only didn't have, or I only didn't know, or I didn't, but since it has been there and it is something that's in the chart and it's a part of you, or it's a part of your psyche, or however you want to see it, you know, makes up your psyche and your energy field, you can look back with a sense of curiosity and be like, that's interesting. Okay, that now I see where that energy has been showing up. And you know, blind spots, I think also, Whitney, you were kind of alluding to blind spots, I think, like this idea of like, you know, working with somebody. That's also really important too, because I will still show my chart to someone who's friends of mine who are astrologers when I'm thinking about something, because I don't see it all. Even with my own chart, after all these years of reading charts, because you literally have like a filter over your eyes to see only certain things, because you've been focusing on this Saturn transit or focusing on this Pluto transit, right? And so when you take your chart to somebody, or you take what's going on to somebody else, they have an even more objective view on it. They're seeing a much bigger, more open picture. And that's where I think like the role of the astrologer or the guide, or the kind of archetypal wizard, this is kind of like the Merlin character in the Arthurian myths, right? That's their job, is to be the reflection of showing something that the person who's inquiring is not, the inquiry that's happening is not able to happen with objectivity, because you're involved in your life. And none of us are 100% objective about our own lives. We all have an emotional investment or subconscious investment somewhere that holds our view very strongly.
Here. I will die on the hill that is astrologers need astrologers too, right? Like, I'm talking to the practicing astrologers out there now. Like, if you're not seeing an astrologer, what are you doing? Do you even believe in your craft? Because, yes, there's like, we only have so much ability to go into depth with our own chart, right? It's like when you seek the oracle and they only give you half the answer, right? Because it is your work to move through that process. And I guess like all of that said, I love these processes that we can dive more deeply into our own chart through journalization and voice notes and whatnot. Trusted friend groups, therapists, etc. But like at the end of the day, and this is why, like I've been through a divorce. I have no idea what was happening in the transits when I went through my divorce. I looked once and then got that sort of acceptance. And what I'm leading to is the fact that we are required to then release it, right? Mm-hmm. We can't hold on to that. Once we've discovered it, we must release it. And that is that. That's why we do this work, right? To uncover and move forward.
Period. Very good. I don't know why I just said very good, like I'm in the classroom right now, but that is very good.
You've been in school.
Very good, Whitney. A+ for you.
A+.
Well done.
Oh my God. Anyway, beautiful. That was
Miss Krantz.
Yeah.
Yes.
You guys reminded me, a couple of years ago, I guess it was 2022, I got a Kickstarter reading from Adam. This was before any of this, of course. And he was like, yeah, your sun trines your MC. And I was like, it does? What? And I had been looking at my chart for like 2 years at that point. So it just proves the point that like you do. You can get a lot out of looking yourself, but at some point, somebody else should kind of support you as well. Well, that was beautiful, and hopefully everybody out there got some good tips, good tricks, got inspired to go explore their charts. Alex, Whitney, where can people find you?
You can find me at www.alexamorosi.com. You can also find me on Substack. I remembered this time. At The Subtle Universe on Substack, I have various levels of subscription, including a free subscription that has a new moon and full moon newsletter.
Amazing. And I can be found on astroarcana.com. That's where you go to book a reading, right? Because sometimes if you just can't see those dark hidden parts of yourself, that's the work we do as astrologers, right? We enable that reflection, and it's so key to partner with a compassionate astrologer. So go book a reading, astroarcana.com. You can also find me here on YouTube. I have a bi-weekly podcast called The House of Good Spirit that comes out every other week.
Let them know again. Make sure they know. Let them know.
Yes, in time with our lunations, where we dissect everything happening within that particular period of time. So go find me here on YouTube. You can also follow me on Instagram at the same handle, astro.arcana.astrology.
Amazing. I am Dana.Solara, Solara on Instagram and TikTok. I've been on TikTok, guys. Me and all the 20-year-olds hanging out on TikTok. It's great. We're having a blast. I actually do really love it. It's fun. I'm having a good time. So come hang out with me there. My website is danasolara.com. I've been doing some different things. I have a new community. It's about empowerment. It's about not putting yourself last anymore and creating your life story as the author and the main character. So if you're curious about that, you can come check it out. I'd love to have you. Anything else, guys?
That was great. No.
That was so much fun. But I just want to say quickly, just one thing, that the what Whitney's, it just occurred to me when you said the stuff that's in the shadows or in the dark. That's not always bad stuff. Sometimes your power is in the dark. Sometimes your light is in the dark. So, 12th, speak about 12th house. I always say that to people with their 12th house placements, like, you have Mars in the 12th house. You have power you never knew you had. You probably have power that you never have seen, or you have Jupiter in the 8th house, whatever. There's aspects of the chart too that it's not just about like, oh, what terror, what drama happened, which it can be, a lot of times it is. Sometimes it's like, what's the skill or the something I always kind of knew I had but never knew how to localize or feel. So I just want to say too, you can discover a lot of really powerful and amazing stuff with this kind of work too.
Yeah,
The good stuff.
good point.
Too. Great way to end it.
Yes. Let us know how it goes in the comments, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.